The November wind cut through the cemetery like it had somewhere important to be. Nathan stood in front of the marble headstone with his hands in his coat pockets, reading the name carved into the stone for what must have been the 1000th time. Olivia Chen Ashford, beloved wife. Gone too soon. 5 years. It had been 5 years since the accident. 5 years since the phone call that destroyed his world. 5 years since he'd buried his wife and tried to figure out how to keep breathing when half of his soul was gone. He came here every year on this date. Not on her birthday, not on their anniversary. On the day she died. Or the day he thought she died. The day everything changed. Nathan was 42 now, though some days he felt ancient. People knew his name, knew his company, knew his money. Tech entrepreneur, billionaire. One of those success stories everyone loved to talk about. Started a company in his garage, built it into something that changed how hospitals tracked medical devices, made more money than he knew what to do with. But none of that money could bring back the person who'd been there in the garage days, eating ramen and believing in him when nobody else did. The security team waited by the cars, far enough away to give him privacy, but close enough to intervene if needed. That was his life now. Constant security, constant awareness of threats. When you have that much money, everyone tells you that you need protection. Nathan had learned that lesson too late. He hadn't protected the one person who actually mattered. He touched the cold marble the way he always did before leaving. I miss you, Liv. Still. Mr. Ashford? The voice came from behind him, young and uncertain. Nathan didn't turn around at first. People approached him sometimes, even here. Usually, asking for money, sometimes for jobs, occasionally just wanting to tell him about some business idea they had. His security usually kept them back, but occasionally someone slipped through. Mr. Ashford, I need to talk to you. Please, it's important. Something in the voice made him turn. A young black woman stood a few feet away, maybe 24 or 25 years old. She wore a cheap jacket that wasn't warm enough for the weather, and clutched a beat-up folder against her chest like it was precious. She looked terrified and determined at the same time. His security team was already moving closer. Nathan held up a hand to stop them. How did you know I'd be here? He asked. I didn't. I've been coming here every week for 2 months hoping you'd show up. I knew you visited, but I didn't know when. I couldn't just approach you at your office. I tried that. They wouldn't let me past the lobby. What's this about? The woman took a breath and Nathan saw her hands shake. Whatever she wanted to say, it was costing her something to be here. My name is Tanya Williams. 5 years ago, I worked as an orderly at County General Hospital. Night shift. I was 19, just trying to pay my bills and save for college. She paused, her eyes darting to the headstone, then back to Nathan. I was working the night your wife was brought in after the accident. Nathan felt something cold settle in his stomach. The hospital told me everything, the police investigated. I don't need to relive that night. I know. I'm sorry. But you need to hear this. Tanya stepped closer, her voice dropping. Mr. Ashford, your wife didn't die that night. The world seemed to tilt slightly. Nathan stared at her, trying to process words that didn't make sense. What did you say? Your wife is still alive. For a few seconds, Nathan couldn't speak. Then anger hit him, hot and sudden. You came to my wife's grave to tell me some sick story? What is this, some kind of scam? I know how it sounds. I know you have no reason to believe me. But I saw things that night that never made sense. Things that have haunted me every single day for 5 years. Tanya opened the folder with shaking hands. I have evidence. Not enough to prove it, maybe, but enough that you'll want to investigate. My wife died in a car accident. There were police reports, medical reports. I identified her body. Nathan's voice was harsh, but underneath the anger was something else. A tiny, terrible spark of hope that he didn't want to feel. Did you, though? Identify her body yourself? Nathan opened his mouth to say yes, then stopped. The accident had been bad. Really bad. The car had gone off a mountain road and caught fire. When they'd asked him to identify Olivia, he'd been in shock, barely functioning. They'd shown him jewelry, personal effects, her wedding ring, her necklace. They'd told him the body was too damaged for viewing. that he didn't want to see her that way, and he'd been grateful, actually, to be spared that final horror. They identified her through dental records, he said, but his voice was less certain now. Dental records that were damaged in a fire at the medical examiner's office 3 weeks later. Convenient, right? Tanya pulled out a piece of paper. This is a transfer order from that night. Your wife was brought into the ER at 11:43 p.m. She was stabilized. The attending physician's notes say she was critical but alive. Then at 1:15 a.m., there's this transfer order to move her to a private surgical suite. That's normal for a trauma patient. Except the order wasn't signed by any doctor on staff that night. And the surgical suite it references doesn't exist at County General. I checked. Suite 7B isn't a real place in that hospital. Nathan took the paper, studying it. It looked official, had the hospital letterhead, patient ID numbers. But Tanya was right. The suite number looked wrong somehow, and the signature was illegible. I could have faked this, Nathan said. You could have made this yourself. I could have, but I didn't. Mr. Ashford, that night, I was taking supplies to the 4th floor when I saw 2 men in suits coming out of the restricted ICU area. Not doctors, not hospital security, just men in expensive suits who looked out of place. I heard one of them say, "The patient is stable enough to move. Get her to the facility before sunrise." When I asked the charge nurse about it later, she told me to mind my business and forget what I heard. So you heard something vague from some men you don't know. There's more. A week later, I was called into a hospital administrator's office. There were lawyers there. They told me I'd witnessed a confidential medical procedure and that I needed to sign an NDA. They offered me $50,000 to sign and never speak about what I saw. Nathan looked at her sharply. Did you take it? Tanya's face showed shame and defiance mixed together. I was 19 years old making minimum wage. My mom was sick. Bills were piling up, and these lawyers were saying I could get fired and maybe even arrested if I talked about confidential patient information. So yes, I took the money and I signed their paper and I kept my mouth shut. Then why are you here now? Because I can't live with it anymore. Because that money paid for my mom's cancer treatment, and she died anyway 2 years ago. Because I see your face on TV sometimes, and I can tell you're still broken over losing your wife. And I know something that might mean she's out there somewhere. Tears were running down Tanya's face now. I was a coward 5 years ago. I let them scare me into silence. But I can't do it anymore. If there's even a chance your wife is alive, you deserve to know. Nathan's mind was racing. Part of him wanted to dismiss this whole thing as crazy. But another part, the part that had never quite accepted Olivia's death, that had always felt like something was wrong about that night, was screaming at him to listen. You said you have evidence. Show me everything. Tanya pulled out more papers, transfer orders with strange signatures, payment records showing large sums moving from an offshore account to various hospital employees, security camera logs with gaps in the timing, a list of staff members who'd quit or been transferred within weeks of the accident. It wasn't proof exactly, but it was enough to raise questions. Why didn't you go to the police? Nathan asked. I tried. 3 years ago, I finally worked up the courage and went to a detective. He looked at what I had, made some calls, and told me I was chasing conspiracy theories, said the case was closed and I should move on. Then 2 days later, someone broke into my apartment. Nothing was stolen except my laptop and all my copies of these documents. I got a call from a blocked number telling me to let it go. But you didn't. I kept digital copies in 3 different cloud accounts under fake names. And I kept digging little by little. I found more people who worked at the hospital that night. Most won't talk. But one nurse told me off the record that she remembers your wife being alive when she was wheeled past her station. She remembers because your wife opened her eyes for a second. Nathan's hands were shaking now. He looked at the gravestone, then back at Tanya. If what you're saying is true, if someone faked my wife's death, then who? And why? That's what you need to investigate. You have resources I don't have. Money, connections, private investigators. I've done what I can, but I'm just a former hospital orderly working as a medical assistant now. You're Nathan Ashford. If anyone can find the truth, it's you. The security, Team was closer now, concerned by how long this conversation was taking. Nathan waved them back again. His mind was working through possibilities, and he didn't like where they led. If someone had faked Olivia's death, they'd done it perfectly. Paid off officials, created false records, convinced everyone, including him, that she was gone. That took money and power, a lot of both. Come with me, Nathan said suddenly. I want to hear everything you remember about that night, every detail. And I want my people to verify these documents. Tanya looked relieved and terrified at the same time. Does that mean you believe me? I don't know what I believe yet, but I know my wife, and I know something always felt wrong about her death. Maybe you're delusional. Maybe this is some elaborate con. Or maybe you're telling the truth and someone took my wife from me. He looked directly at Tanya. And if that's true, if someone did this, I'm going to find out who, and I'm going to get her back. They walked toward the cars, leaving the marble headstone behind. Nathan glanced back once. Maybe it wasn't Olivia buried there after all. Maybe the last 5 years of grief had been based on a lie. The thought should have made him angry. Instead, all he felt was a desperate, dangerous hope. If Olivia was alive somewhere, he would find her. No matter what it cost, no matter who stood in his way, he'd failed to protect her 5 years ago. He wouldn't fail again. Nathan's private office looked nothing like the rest of his building. While the company floors were all glass walls and open spaces, this room was traditional, secure, and windowless. He'd designed it that way after becoming paranoid about corporate espionage. Now he was grateful for that paranoia. If what Tanya was telling him was true, he couldn't trust anyone. Tanya sat across from him, looking uncomfortable in the leather chair. She kept glancing around at the expensive art on the walls, the imported wood desk, the technology that probably cost more than she made in a year. Nathan poured her coffee from the personal machine in the corner. His hands were steadier now. He'd shifted into the mindset that had built his company from nothing. Problem-solving mode, strategic thinking. Walk me through that night again, he said. Every single detail, no matter how small. For the next 2 hours, Tanya talked. Nathan recorded everything, took notes, asked questions. She described the hospital layout, the staff she remembered, the exact timeline of when she'd seen what. She talked about the 2 men in suits, how they'd moved with authority, how hospital staff had deferred to them. She described the administrator's office where she'd been pressured to sign the NDA, the lawyers who'd been there, the exact amount they'd offered. $50,000 in cash, Tanya said. Not a check. Not a bank transfer. They handed me a briefcase with $50,000 in $100 bills and made me count it in front of them. Then they made me sign about 20 pages of legal documents I didn't understand. Do you still have copies of what you signed? They took everything. Said it was too sensitive to leave with me. I tried to take pictures with my phone, but they made me delete them while they watched. Nathan made a note. That kind of operation spoke to serious planning and resources. You didn't just show up with $50,000 in cash and a stack of legal documents on a whim. Somebody had known exactly what they were doing. Tell me about the payment records you found. How did you get those? Tanya hesitated. I did something illegal. I knew one of the hospital IT guys, and he owed me a favor. I asked him to pull payment records from around that time. He gave me a flash drive and told me to never tell anyone where I got it. And these offshore accounts? I'm not stupid, Mr. Ashford. I couldn't trace them very far, but I know what money laundering looks like. My cousin went to prison for financial crimes, and he used to brag about how you hide money. These accounts had all the signs. Payments going to shell companies, then bouncing through 3 or 4 more companies before reaching the people who got paid off. Nathan pulled up his computer and started making calls, first to his head of security, then to a private investigator he'd used before for corporate issues. He didn't explain everything, just said he needed background checks on specific hospital employees and a full audit of financial records from 5 years ago. The investigator, a former FBI agent named Chen, arrived within an hour. Nathan had Tanya repeat her story again while Chen listened without interrupting. When she finished, Chen looked at Nathan. This is either an elaborate fantasy or one of the most sophisticated cover-ups I've ever heard of, Chen said. To pull something like this off, you'd need access to hospital records, cooperation from medical staff, control over police reports, and enough money to make problems disappear. Can you investigate it? I can try. But Mr. Ashford, if someone went to this much trouble, they're not going to appreciate you poking around. This could get dangerous. I don't care about dangerous. I care about the truth, Chen nodded slowly. All right. But we start careful. No big moves that tip anyone off. We verify what Miss Williams has told us, then we figure out next steps. Over the next week, Nathan barely slept. Chen's team worked around the clock, pulling records, interviewing former hospital staff, examining the accident scene reports. Tanya stayed at Nathan's estate in a guest house with security watching her. She'd been right about being followed. Chen's people had spotted 2 different teams conducting surveillance on her apartment. The findings came in pieces, each one more disturbing than the last. The medical examiner who'd signed off on Olivia's death had retired immediately after and moved to the Cayman Islands. He now lived in a beachfront property worth $3 million. His previous salary as a city employee had been $70,000 a year. The funeral director, who'd handled Olivia's burial, had received a payment of $200,000 from an offshore account. 3 days after the funeral, the payment was labeled as consulting fees. The dental records used to identify Olivia had been damaged in a fire at the medical examiner's office 3 weeks after her death. The fire was ruled accidental, caused by faulty wiring, but the only room damaged had been the record storage area. Hospital surveillance footage from the night of the accident existed, but there were gaps. 37 minutes missing from the emergency room cameras, 42 minutes missing from the ICU floor. The hospital's explanation was a technical glitch, but the timing was too convenient. Nathan sat in his office reviewing all of this, feeling sick. Someone had orchestrated this perfectly. Every loose end tied up, every witness paid off or scared into silence, every record either destroyed or altered. There's something else, Chen said, walking in with a file. I tracked down the paramedic who responded to your wife's accident. He lives upstate now, works for a different ambulance company. I paid him a visit, and he was nervous. Really nervous. But after I assured him this was just background research and nobody would know we talked, he opened up a little. He said your wife was alive when they pulled her from the car. Badly injured, unconscious, but alive. They stabilized her and transported her to County General. He remembers because head trauma cases are serious and he was worried she wouldn't make it. Nathan's heart was pounding. Did he see what happened at the hospital? He said he handed her off to the ER team and filled out his paperwork. Standard procedure. But here's the interesting part. About 2 weeks later, he got called into his supervisor's office. There were 2 men there, not anyone from the ambulance company. They asked him detailed questions about the accident, about your wife's condition, about everything he remembered. Then they told him the case was classified and he wasn't to discuss it with anyone. When he asked why, they said it involved national security. National security? That's ridiculous, I agree. But it scared him enough to keep quiet for 5 years. Mr. Ashford, whoever did this, had serious authority. The ability to wave around national security implications, to make people believe questions would get them in trouble. That's not your average corporate espionage. Nathan stood up and paced. His mind was racing through possibilities. 5 years ago, his company had been working on breakthrough medical device technology. They were in the middle of negotiations with several major players, including a pharmaceutical giant called Blackwell Industries. The negotiations had gotten hostile. Patent disputes, accusations of stolen technology, legal threats. Then Olivia died and Nathan had fallen apart. He'd stepped away from the company for almost a year. The technology development had stalled, and when he finally came back, Blackwell Industries had proposed a partnership. Nathan had been too grief-stricken to fight anymore, so he'd agreed. The partnership gave Blackwell significant control over the technology his company had developed. Chen, I need you to look into Blackwell Industries, specifically financial transactions from 5 years ago. See if any money connects to the people who got paid off. You think a competitor did this? I think someone benefited from Olivia's death. And I think Blackwell benefited the most. Chen nodded and left to make calls. Nathan turned to find Tanya standing in the doorway. She looked exhausted. I heard you talking, she said. Someone really did this. Your wife is alive somewhere. Maybe. We still don't have proof of that. We have proof something suspicious happened, but not proof she's alive. Then we keep looking until we find her. Nathan appreciated the we, even though he knew Tanya had no obligation to help beyond what she'd already done. You should go rest. This isn't your burden to carry. Yes, it is. I stayed quiet for 5 years. I took their money and pretended I didn't know anything. If something happens to your wife because I waited so long to speak up, I'll never forgive myself. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Olivia, about what she might have gone through if she was really alive. 5 years. Where had she been? What condition was she in? Did she think he'd abandoned her? His phone rang at 2 in the morning. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? The voice that came through was distorted, run through some kind of electronic modifier. Stop looking, Mr. Ashford. Let the dead rest. Nathan sat up straight. Who is this? Someone who's warning you for your own good. Your wife is gone. Accept it and move on. If she's gone, you won't mind me investigating. There was a pause. You're playing with things you don't understand. Force is much bigger than you. Walk away now while you still can. Or what? Or you'll lose more than just your wife. You'll lose everything. Your company, your freedom, maybe your life. Is satisfying your curiosity worth that? The call ended. Nathan immediately called Chen and told him about it. Chen sent a team to sweep Nathan's phones and office for bugs. They found 3. 1 in his desk phone, 1 behind a painting, 1 in the ceiling vent. Someone had been listening to everything. The next morning, Nathan made a decision. He called a press conference and announced he was stepping down as CEO for health reasons. He gave a speech about needing time away, about the stress of running a billion-dollar company, about wanting to focus on his personal well-being. The business media ran stories speculating about his mental health, about whether he was having a breakdown. Let them think that. Let whoever was watching think they'd won, that he was giving up. Because Nathan wasn't giving up. He was just getting started. He'd made his enemies think he was defeated so they'd stop watching so closely. Now the real investigation could begin. He assembled a team in secret. Former military operatives who specialized in extraction and rescue. Tech specialists who could hack systems and trace digital footprints. Legal experts who understood international law and jurisdiction. He moved money quietly, setting up resources in different countries. Tanya was right about one thing. His wife was alive somewhere. He could feel it now, the certainty settling into his bones. Someone had taken her, hidden her, made the world believe she was dead. But they'd made one mistake. They'd let Tanya see something, and Tanya had been brave enough to speak up. Where do we start? Tanya asked when Nathan explained his plan. We follow the money. Money always leaves a trail, no matter how well you try to hide it. Whoever did this spent millions covering their tracks. We find where that money went, and we find Olivia. Chen walked in with a laptop. I've got something. Payments from Blackwell Industries to a shell corporation. That same corporation made payments to the medical examiner, the funeral director, and 5 hospital administrators. We've got a connection. Nathan looked at the screen, feeling cold rage build in his chest. Lawrence Blackwell, his business rival. The man he'd partnered with after Olivia's death. The man who'd acted concerned and supportive while probably orchestrating the whole thing. Get me everything on Blackwell. Every property he owns, every company he controls, every asset he has. If Olivia is alive, he knows where she is. The hunt was on. 3 months had passed since Tanya showed up at the cemetery, and Nathan felt like he was drowning in information, but still nowhere close to finding Olivia. Every lead opened 5 more questions. Every answer revealed how deep this conspiracy went. Lawrence Blackwell was old money and old power. His family had been in pharmaceuticals for 4 generations, building an empire worth somewhere north of $15 billion. Blackwell Industries controlled everything from manufacturing to distribution to research facilities scattered across 12 countries. Finding one person hidden somewhere in that network was like searching for a specific grain of sand on a beach. But Nathan had something Blackwell didn't expect. He had motivation that went beyond money or power. He had the kind of focus that comes from knowing the person you love most might still be alive after you'd spent 5 years mourning them. Chen's investigation had mapped out the payment trail. Money from Blackwell Industries had gone to a shell corporation called Meridian Health Solutions. From there, it had split into dozens of smaller payments. The medical examiner, the funeral director, hospital staff, police officers who'd handled the accident scene. Even the tow truck driver who'd removed Olivia's wrecked car had received $20,000 a month after the accident. It's meticulous, Chen said during one of their late-night strategy sessions in Nathan's home office. Whoever planned this thought of everything. They paid people enough to be comfortable, but not so much that it would raise immediate red flags. Spread the payments out over time. Used different intermediary accounts. This is professional level work. What about Meridian Health Solutions? What do they actually do? That's where it gets interesting. On paper, they're a consulting firm for private medical facilities. They help high-end clinics and private hospitals with operations, staffing, that sort of thing. Very exclusive clientele, very discreet. But when I tried to track their actual work, I hit walls everywhere. No client lists, no public records, nothing. Tanya had been sitting quietly in the corner, but now she spoke up. What if they're not a consulting firm at all? What if that's just cover for what they really do? Which is what? Nathan asked. Running private facilities where people can be kept without anyone asking questions. Rich people get sick or injured and they don't want publicity. Or maybe someone needs to disappear for a while. You'd need secure locations, medical staff willing to keep secrets, the ability to move patients without leaving records. Nathan turned to Chen. Can we find their facilities? I've got people working on it. Meridian has connections to about 24 private medical centers, mostly in remote locations or in countries with flexible privacy laws. The problem is we can't just raid all of them. Some are legitimate businesses, and if we tip off the wrong people, they could move your wife before we find her. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of Chen's investigators was former CIA, and she had contacts in the intelligence community. She discovered that Meridian Health Solutions had government contracts, black budget stuff officially classified. They ran medical facilities for witnesses in protection, for intelligence assets who needed care, for situations where someone needed to be alive but officially didn't exist. So they specialize in making people disappear, Nathan said, reading the report. That's how Blackwell knew who to hire. He found people who were already experts at this. It also explains the national security angle, Chen added. When they told the paramedic the case was classified, they weren't lying. Meridian has clearance to claim that. They just weren't using it for legitimate reasons. Nathan felt sick. Olivia wasn't just hidden. She was hidden inside a system designed to be impenetrable, protected by layers of government secrecy and corporate money. Finding her would mean going up against both. But he had advantages too. Money could buy a lot of things, including people's loyalty. Over the next month, Nathan's team quietly approached staff members at various Meridian facilities. Nurses, orderlies, administrative workers. Most refused to talk. But a few, offered enough money and protection, started sharing information. What they learned painted a disturbing picture. Meridian ran facilities for all kinds of clients. Some legitimate, some less so. Witnesses who needed protection. Foreign nationals recovering from injuries sustained in covert operations. Wealthy people who wanted plastic surgery or addiction treatment without publicity. And sometimes people who were being held against their will but in comfortable captivity. They call them long-term care patients, one nurse told Chen's investigator during a recorded conversation. They're kept sedated or on medications that keep them compliant. Families are told they're being cared for, but really they're just being stored. I quit after 6 months because I couldn't handle it anymore. Do you remember any patients who fit this description? The investigator asked, showing a photo of Olivia. The nurse studied it for a long time. Maybe. There was a woman at the Caribbean facility. Asian features, about the right age. She'd been there for years. Head trauma patient, they said. But she seemed healthier than she should have been for someone with that kind of injury. Like they were keeping her sedated on purpose. Nathan felt his heart stop when he heard the recording. Caribbean facility. That narrowed it down. Meridian ran 3 facilities in the Caribbean. All on private islands, all catering to ultra-wealthy clients who wanted complete privacy. Which island? Nathan demanded. The nurse didn't know. She'd only worked at one facility and hadn't been told its exact location. Employees were flown in on private planes with blackout windows. But she remembered details about the facility itself. The layout, the number of buildings, the vegetation, the type of medical equipment they had. Nathan's tech team used satellite imagery to search every island in the Caribbean. They were looking for facilities that matched the nurse's description. It took weeks of analysis, comparing images, tracking private flights, monitoring supply deliveries to remote locations. Finally, they found it. A small island 50 miles off the coast of a nation friendly to American business interests. The island was owned by a subsidiary of Meridian Health Solutions. Satellite images showed several buildings arranged around a central courtyard, solar panels, a helipad, a deep-water dock. It looked like a luxury resort. but thermal imaging showed much more power usage than a resort would need. Medical equipment drew a lot of power. That's got to be it, Chen said, studying the images. But Nathan, we can't just storm in there. That island is technically foreign territory. If we go in with force and we're wrong, you could end up arrested for kidnapping. If we're right but can't prove it, Blackwell will move your wife before we can get back with authorization. So what do you suggest? We need someone inside, someone who can verify your wife is there before we make any moves. They spent 2 weeks building a cover story. Nathan would pose as a wealthy investor interested in the facility's services. He'd bring Tanya as his personal assistant and 2 security team members as bodyguards. They'd tour the facility, get a sense of the layout and security, and try to confirm whether Olivia was actually there. Getting an invitation was easier than expected. Meridian was always looking for wealthy clients, and Nathan's money opened doors. He expressed interest in a private recovery facility for a fictional family member dealing with addiction. Within days, they had an appointment to tour the Caribbean facility. The flight out was tense. Nathan kept running through scenarios in his head. What if Olivia wasn't there? What if she was there but so damaged he wouldn't recognize her? What if seeing him after 5 years triggered something that put her in danger? Tanya sat across from him on the private jet, looking nervous. What if they recognize me from the hospital? You were 19 and wearing scrubs. Now you're 24 in professional clothes. People change a lot in 5 years. Just stick to the story. The island was beautiful in a sterile, controlled way. Perfect landscaping, pristine buildings, everything designed to project luxury and discretion. They were met by a facility director named Dr. Hammond, a smooth-talking man in his 50s who gave off the vibe of someone who'd spent his career catering to difficult rich people. "Welcome to Paradise Cove," he said with a practiced smile. "We pride ourselves on providing the highest level of care in the most private setting possible. Our clients include celebrities, business leaders, and dignitaries from around the world. Discretion is our absolute priority." The tour was impressive. State-of-the-art medical equipment, luxurious patient rooms, therapy facilities that looked more like spa amenities than hospital wards. But Nathan noticed other things too. Cameras everywhere, security checkpoints disguised as decoration, doors that locked electronically. This wasn't just a medical facility. It was a very comfortable prison. "What types of cases do you handle?" Nathan asked. "All kinds. Addiction recovery, post-surgical care, rehabilitation from injuries. We also handle long-term care for patients with conditions that require ongoing monitoring, but don't need intensive hospital settings." "Like what?" "Traumatic brain injuries, for instance. We have several patients who've been with us for years, receiving excellent care in a peaceful environment while their families maintain privacy." Nathan's pulse quickened. "Could I see those facilities?" Dr. Hammond hesitated. "Those are our most sensitive areas. Patient privacy is paramount, of course. I wouldn't want to intrude on anyone's recovery. But I'd like to see what level of care is provided. From a distance would be fine." The director considered, then nodded. "I suppose a brief view wouldn't hurt." "This way." They walked through another building, this one quieter and more hospital-like. The patient rooms here had medical monitoring equipment visible through windows. Nathan glanced into each one as casually as he could manage. Then he saw her, in a room near the end of the hall. A woman in a wheelchair, her back to the door facing a window. Her hair was shorter and lighter than he remembered, but something about her posture, the way she held her head, made his breath catch. Olivia. He forced himself to keep walking, to not react, to maintain the casual interest of a potential client, but his heart was hammering so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. "These patients," Nathan said, keeping his voice steady. "How long do they typically stay?" "It varies. Some are with us for months, others for years, whatever time is needed for proper recovery." "And their families visit regularly?" "Some do. Others prefer to maintain distance for the patient's peace of mind." Nathan wanted to smash through that door, to run to his wife, to end this nightmare right now. But Chen's warning echoed in his mind. If he moved too fast, if he showed his hand, they'd move Olivia somewhere else. Somewhere he might never find. He finished the tour, asked appropriate questions, expressed interest in using the facility. Dr. Hammond gave him brochures and contact information. They shook hands. Nathan and his team returned to the helicopter that would take them back to the mainland. The moment they were in the air and far enough away, Nathan turned to Chen. "She's there. I saw her. Room at the end of the east wing, woman in a wheelchair. You're sure it was her? I'm sure. What do we do now? Chen pulled out a laptop. Now we plan an extraction. We know where she is, what the facility looks like, their security setup. We go back in 3 days with a larger team. We get your wife out and we make sure we have enough evidence to bury Blackwell and everyone involved in this. Tanya was crying quietly. She's really alive. After all this time, she's really alive. Nathan stared out the helicopter window at the island disappearing behind them. Olivia was there. Alive. After 5 years of grief, of rage, of learning to live with loss. She was alive. Hold on, Liv, he whispered. I'm coming for you. The planning took 72 hours. Chen assembled a team of 8 people, all former special operations with experience in hostile extractions. They studied the satellite images, the floor plans Nathan had memorized during the tour, the security patterns they'd observed. Every detail mattered. One mistake could mean losing Olivia forever. Nathan wanted to be part of the extraction team. Chen refused. You're emotionally compromised, Chen said bluntly. The moment you see your wife, every bit of tactical training goes out the window. You stay on the yacht. We bring her to you. That's not happening. I'm not sitting on a boat while someone else gets her out. Mr. Ashford, with respect, this is what I do. I've extracted hostages from worse situations than this. But I can't do my job if I'm worried about you making impulsive decisions because your wife is involved. They argued for an hour before reaching a compromise. Nathan would come on the operation, but would stay with the extraction vehicle. He wouldn't enter the facility unless something went catastrophically wrong. It wasn't what he wanted, but it was better than being left behind. The yacht anchored 5 miles offshore from the island. It was large enough to have a medical bay set up with a doctor and 2 nurses standing by. Nathan had explained Olivia's situation. 5 years in captivity, probably on medications to keep her compliant, potential brain damage from the original accident. They needed to be ready for anything. Tanya was on the yacht too. She'd insisted on coming, said she needed to see this through. Nathan understood. This had become her mission as much as his. The team left at 2 in the morning. They used a small motorboat with a quiet engine, approaching the island from the south where the cliffs provided cover. Chen had equipment that could disrupt the facility's security cameras for a 12-minute window. That's all the time they'd have. Nathan watched them disappear into the darkness, every muscle in his body tense. This was it. Either they'd get Olivia out or everything would fall apart. On the island, Chen's team moved quickly and quietly. They'd mapped out the patrol patterns of the security guards. 2 men on the grounds, 1 at the main gate, 1 monitoring the security feeds. The plan was to avoid confrontation if possible. Get in, get Olivia, get out before anyone realized what was happening. They reached the east wing. Chen disabled the electronic lock on the exterior door, using a device his tech specialist had built, based on Nathan's description of the security system. The door clicked open. They were in. The hallway was dimly lit, silent except for the hum of medical equipment. Chen checked his watch. 7 minutes until the cameras came back online. He motioned to his team and they moved toward the room where Nathan had seen Olivia. But when they opened the door, the room was empty. Chen's heart sank. Had they moved her? Had someone tipped them off? Then he heard footsteps in the hallway. A nurse doing late-night rounds. She froze when she saw the armed team started to scream. Chen's partner moved fast, restraining her, keeping his hand over her mouth. Where's the patient who was in this room? Chen demanded quietly. The woman in the wheelchair. Where is she? The nurse's eyes were wide with terror. Chen eased his hand away slightly. I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to know where she is. Garden, the nurse whispered. She couldn't sleep. One of the night staff took her to the garden. She goes there sometimes. Chen checked his watch. 4 minutes. Show us now. They moved through the facility quickly, the nurse leading them. She was shaking but cooperating. They emerged into an interior. Courtyard, surrounded by buildings on all sides. Tropical plants, a small fountain, benches arranged around pathways. And there, sitting in a wheelchair near the fountain, was Olivia. A young orderly sat nearby, reading on his phone. He looked up at the sound of footsteps, saw the armed team, and wisely put his hands up without protest. Chen approached Olivia carefully. She turned at the sound, her face confused. She looked fragile, thinner than in the photos Nathan had shown him, but she was awake, alert, alive. Mrs. Ashford, Chen said gently. My name is Chen. Your husband sent me. We're here to take you home. Olivia stared at him. I don't understand. My husband? I don't have a husband. Chen's blood ran cold. Nathan had warned him that Olivia might have memory issues, but hearing the confusion in her voice made it real. 5 years of captivity, of medication, of whatever they'd done to her. I know you're confused. I know this is scary. But I promise you we're here to help. Your name is Olivia Chen Ashford. You've been held here against your will for 5 years. Your husband has been searching for you. Please, we need to leave now. I can't just leave. I'm a patient here. I'm recovering from an accident. That accident was 5 years ago. These people have been lying to you. Please, Mrs. Ashford, we're running out of time. 2 minutes left. Chen made a decision. He nodded to his medic, who approached Olivia with a syringe. This is just something to keep you calm. I'm sorry, but we don't have time to explain everything right now. The medic gave her a mild sedative, enough to make her compliant but not unconscious. Olivia's protest faded as the medication took effect. Chen lifted her from the wheelchair, and they started moving back toward their exit point. That's when the alarms went off. Someone had found the restrained nurse, or the cameras had come back online early. Suddenly, the facility was bathed in red emergency lighting. Chen heard shouting, running footsteps. Move, Chen barked. Now! They ran through the building, Chen carrying Olivia, the rest of his team providing cover. Security guards appeared, but they were facility security, not trained soldiers. Chen's team had the advantage of surprise and superior training. Gunshots rang out. Chen felt one whip past his head, too close. His partner returned fire, not to kill but to suppress, to buy them time. They burst through the door they'd entered from and sprinted across the grounds toward the cliffs. On the yacht, Nathan heard the gunfire. He was moving before Chen's voice came through the radio. Extraction successful. Coming in hot. Get the boat ready. Nathan ran to the stern where the motorboat was tied. The doctor and nurses were already there. Medical equipment ready. Tanya stood next to him, gripping the railing. Minutes felt like hours. Then Nathan saw lights moving in the darkness. The motorboat appeared, Chen's team aboard, and in Chen's arms, wrapped in a blanket, was Olivia. Nathan's knees almost gave out. After 5 years, 5 years of grief, of searching, of hoping against hope, she was here. She was real. The boat pulled alongside the yacht. Nathan reached down, helping bring her aboard. Olivia was barely conscious, her eyes unfocused from the sedative. But when Nathan touched her hand, she blinked slowly, trying to focus on his face. I don't know you, she murmured. Who are you? Nathan felt tears streaming down his face. I'm Nathan. I'm your husband. And I've been looking for you for 5 years. The medical team took over, getting Olivia onto a gurney and into the medical bay. Nathan followed, unwilling to let her out of his sight. The doctor began examining her, checking vitals, looking for injuries. She's been heavily medicated, the doctor said. I'm seeing signs of long-term sedative use. It's going to take time to get these drugs out of her system. Her memory issues might be temporary or they might be permanent. There's no way to know until the medication clears. But she's alive, Nathan said. That's what matters. She's alive. Chen came into the medical bay, his face grim. We need to leave now. I guarantee that facility is calling every authority they can reach. We need to be in international waters before anyone can stop us. The yacht's engines roared to life. They moved away from the island, pushing for maximum speed. Nathan sat next to Olivia's bed, holding her hand, watching her sleep as the medication wore off. Tanya stood in the doorway, crying. We did it. We actually did it. You did it, Nathan said. None of this happens without you. You came to me at that cemetery when you could have stayed silent. You risked everything to tell the truth. I should have done it sooner. 5 years she was there. 5 years I stayed quiet. You're doing the right thing now. That's what matters. As the sun rose over the ocean, Olivia began to stir. Her eyes opened slowly, clearer now. She looked around the medical bay, confused and frightened. Where am I? Nathan moved to where she could see him. You're safe. You're on a yacht heading to safety. My name is Nathan Ashford. I'm your husband. Olivia studied his face. I don't remember you. I don't remember having a husband, I know. They did things to you. Gave you medications that affected your memory. But I have proof. Photos, videos, documents. Our whole life together. I can show you everything. Why would someone do this? Why would they take me? Because of me. Because of my business. Someone wanted to hurt me, to control me, and they used you to do it. Nathan's voice broke. I'm so sorry, Liv. I should have protected you. I should have known something was wrong. Olivia looked at him for a long moment. I don't remember you. But I believe you. Something about this place I was at, it never felt right. They told me I was recovering from an accident, that I had no family, that I needed to stay there for treatment. But sometimes I'd have dreams. Dreams of a different life. Those weren't dreams. That was your real life. The life we had together before this happened. Over the next few hours, as they sailed toward safety, Nathan showed Olivia their life. Their wedding photos. Videos from vacations they'd taken. Pictures of their house, their friends, their life before the accident. She watched it all with a mixture of sadness and frustration, like seeing a movie about someone else's life. I should remember this, she said, tears running down her face. This person in these photos, she looks happy. She looks loved. Why can't I remember being her? Because they took that from you. But we can build new memories. We can start again. The doctor came in with test results. I'm seeing evidence of long-term use of benzodiazepines and other sedatives. These drugs, used over years, can cause significant memory impairment. The good news is that with time, some memories might return. The brain is remarkably resilient. But I need to be honest with you both. She might never fully remember her previous life. Nathan looked at Olivia, at this woman who was his wife but also a stranger. Then we'll create a new life together, whatever it takes. Olivia reached out tentatively and touched his hand. You really loved me that much? Enough to spend 5 years searching? I really love you that much. Present tense. That hasn't changed. As the yacht sailed toward safety, Nathan made calls to his lawyers, preparing to file criminal charges against everyone involved. To federal authorities, ready to blow the whistle on Meridian Health Solutions and their illegal operations. To journalists, ready to tell the story of what had been done to his wife. Lawrence Blackwell's empire was about to come crashing down, and Nathan was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what had been done in the name of corporate greed and power. But first, he had to help Olivia heal. To help her recover not just physically but mentally from 5 years of captivity. To show her that she was safe now, that no one would ever take her away again. It would be a long road. But for the first time in 5 years, Nathan had hope. Real, tangible hope. His wife was alive. She was safe. And whatever happened next, they'd face it together. 6 months after the extraction, Olivia sat in a therapy session at a private facility in Switzerland. This facility was different from the island prison. Here she'd chosen to be. Here the doors weren't locked. Here, the doctors worked to heal her instead of keeping her sedated. The therapist, Dr. Reeves, was patient and kind. She specialized in trauma recovery and memory disorders. Tell me about the dreams you've been having. Olivia closed her eyes. They're getting clearer. Not full memories, but pieces. I dreamed about a garden last night. There was a man reading to me. I could almost hear his voice. And I felt safe. Really safe. That's progress. Your brain is starting to process the suppressed memories. The medication they gave you created barriers, but those barriers are breaking down as your system clears. But will I ever really remember? Will I ever be the person I was before? Dr. Reeves leaned forward. I think you're asking the wrong question. You'll never be exactly who you were 5 years ago. That person was shaped by experiences you don't remember. But you're becoming someone new. Someone who's been through something terrible and survived. That's its own kind of strength. Olivia nodded, but the frustration was clear on her face. Nathan visited every day, bringing photos and videos, telling her stories about their life. She could see the love in his eyes when he looked at her. Sometimes she felt an echo of it, a warmth that felt like recognition, but it wasn't the same as remembering. Nathan understood. The doctors had warned him that Olivia might never fully recover her memories. The combination